So Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan assuring South Africa that there will be no load shedding on election day. But with many parts of the country without electricity, the message was probably not heard by many. Eskom introducing stage 4 load shedding after the breakdown, they say, of several units at generation plants. The outages prompting outrage by the ANC, with Deputy Secretary-General Jessie Duarte demanding answers. But with rolling blackouts now a daily occurrence, energy expert and University of Johannesburg physics professor, that's Harmut Winkler, says it will take years to resolve this issue. In fact, he joins us now on the line. And Prof, this was meant to be a video call. We were meant to see each other on this interview. Ironically, you're on the phone because of load shedding.
Exactly, yes, that's right. Good morning.
Morning. Thanks very much for joining us so early this morning. South Africa's power crisis, stage 4 load shedding, we're meant to get down to stage 3 today. How much damage are we doing to our economy as these rolling blackouts continue?
I don't even want to put a figure to it, but it's clear that with a lot of people not being able to pursue their normal activities and the economic activities not proceeding as normal, it is going to cost. You mentioned a figure earlier, and I suspect that's probably at the right sort of ballpark. So it is expensive. Unfortunately, we are in a situation where there's very little that can be done in the short term.
So Pravin Gordhan, the Public Enterprises Minister, we heard from him yesterday, along with Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter as well. The Public Enterprises Minister himself, we've not heard from in a very long time insofar as load shedding is concerned. I'm not sure if you were able to catch that briefing, if it was clashing with your own load shedding schedule wherever you live. But did he say anything, according to what you heard, that we haven't heard before?
Not really. The story that there would be no load shedding on election day, that's just their prediction. It's not, they can never guarantee that, and I think the minister said that eventually. What they're trying to do is to build up the reserves at the moment, such that they will have some spare capacity on actual election day. There's also some planned maintenance to various plants which are down, not for any breakdown reasons, but because they're scheduled to have these repairs. And those, I imagine, would be back up again. So the probability that there would be load shedding on Monday is lower, much lower than it is now, but it could still happen.
I mean, what do we read into the fact that, you know, we were given a whole range of excuses, among them breakdowns at power stations. We've also seen breakdowns at Medupi, at Kusile. Yes. These are brand new power stations. Why are they breaking down?
That is really, it's understandable that some of the oldest coal power stations would break down more often than normal. That's exactly, one can think of these power stations as being cars. Once they get very old, they are going to give you lots of problems. Many of the oldest coal power stations were supposed to have been switched off and replaced by new plants by now, but that hasn't happened because of bad planning in the last, especially in the last decade or so. But the fact that Medupi and Kusile are breaking down, that's really unexcusable, and that points to serious mistakes during the construction phase. Never mind that the construction of Medupi and Kusile has also cost a lot more than was initially said, and that it took a lot longer. That is the real issue, and also the main reason why Eskom is in financial difficulties right now.
I mean, you talk about the issues in the construction phase of Medupi and Kusile. What kinds of issues are you talking about?
You might recall that recently there was a situation where, even though this was a new plant, there had been technical faults identified, which should have been picked up during the construction phase. I don't know the exact nature of those technical faults, but it required modifications to what was at that stage essentially a new plant. We also had the fact that these breakdowns are happening, that just shouldn't be happening to a plant in the first decade of its operations. They should be running fairly smoothly by now, and this all points to these mistakes which were made. And unfortunately, the whole construction of Medupi and Kusile has been interlinked with various issues which are being raised now in the courts and so on, and through investigations. I think we're going to hear a lot more of that. But unfortunately, at the time when the decisions were made to start this construction, I think people were not really checking as much as they should have what is actually going on, and a lot of money has been wasted. I think that's just the long and short of it.
I mean, South Africans listening to that briefing yesterday by the Minister of Public Enterprises and the Eskom CEO, they would have heard a lot of technical speak as well, but really what all of us want to know is when load shedding is going to come to an end. We're 14 years into this phenomenon that is unique to our country. We've even coined the phrase load shedding. It's a phrase that we use in everyday life as if it's nothing. When are we going to see it ending, and what's it going to take?
Yeah, this is clearly going to continue for a while because there are no new major power stations that are going to be coming into operation anytime soon. The only thing we can really do to get a lot more power relatively quickly, and by relatively quickly I mean in the next 3 years or so, is really expand on the solar and wind farms, because those take about 2 years to construct. If one adds an extra year just to get the tendering and the red tape, it would take about 3 years. Now, we're supposed to be getting a fair amount of new renewable energy every year, but that is not happening at the moment either, and for that I blame the Department of Mineral and Energy, because they haven't been keeping up with their own, the government's own plan. According to the government's own plan, we're supposed to get 2,600 megawatts of new renewable energy every year. Now, this year we're not expecting that. They're supposed to be making an announcement about new plants that are going to be come into operation in 2 or 3 years' time, but that also seems to be delaying. So the whole process seems to be delaying. And the other thing that needs to happen is that the plan is out of date as well by now. The plan's supposed to be updated every 2 years, and that, again, the last time we had a plan published was in 2019.
I mean, the issue around breakdowns and maintenance that we've been discussing throughout this interview, what are these two phenomenons insofar as Eskom's operations? What is it costing in terms of generation capacity?
Yeah, one of the big problems that once one of these existing plants it breaks down, the one way you can get emergency power relatively quickly is through the use of gas. Right. But gas is very expensive. We have some gas plants in Mossel Bay and in Cape Town, and those ones can come on when there's an emergency. But what's been happening over the last few years is that they've been running much more than they should be, and the gas as a fuel is very expensive. So every time that we have this load shedding when there's absolutely nothing else to do, you will find that they're probably using those plants which are just meant for emergency backup. Yeah. We now also have a situation where the Department of Mineral and Energy was supposed to be initiating a whole lot of what they called emergency project, and the story of these ships with gas power stations on them, which is also becoming controversial. Now that was supposed to be something which should happen very quickly. Again, it's not happening quickly at all. And the whole idea about whether one needs to start contract for emergency supply, which is for 20 years, that doesn't really make sense either. So the whole thing is just fairly badly planned, and unfortunately there seems to be this element of politics on the one hand and self-interest by some major organization on the other hand, which is complicating the whole issue.
Yeah, and around we go. Professor Harmut Winkler, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning on the program.
Thank you.
He is a professor of physics at University of Johannesburg. As we continue to unpack the latest in our load shedding saga, we are still on stage 4 of load shedding. The Public Enterprises Minister last night telling us that hopefully by today we'll get 2,000 megawatts into the grid, meaning we might be able to go down to stage 3 today and then stage 2 tomorrow. So we'll keep you updated on that as it develops.